right. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we are on week 2 for the leadership study for 5 levels of leadership. So we will be going over positional leadership today. Specifically, it's going to be into 2 parts. So the first part is the upside of position and the downside of position. So we're going to chat about that for about half the time here. And then we are going to open it up like last time. If you were not here last time, we open it up to some questions. So if you guys have any questions while we're going through this or something comes to mind, you can jot a note down to come back to it later. And we're going to be opening it up for some of that after we get through some of this. So the upside of position, he started with 4 different points on basically what is good about positional leadership. And I think the biggest thing that we have to remember, this isn't something that is bad. It is something that we don't want to stay at, right? We always want to be growing, but positional leadership is foundational. It's something that we all have to have in order to continue to grow, right? So it's something that's important. And one thing that he says in the first part, the number 1 point there, he mentions it's usually given to people because they have the potential. So someone has seen potential in you. Someone has maybe called out that leadership potential in you. Someone has belief in you. And I know that was massively foundational for me when I started this business and when I was growing in this for Tiffany and Phallin to call out things in me, for them to have that belief in me, to see the leadership qualities, because some people might naturally step into those things, but not everyone always sees that in themselves. And I was a person who needed that like validation or someone to call out some of those things in me, or to even kind of give me permission to do things like commenting in the team page or doing a video or asking me to talk on, a team call or things like that. It wasn't something I naturally would have stepped into, but I was given permission to do that. I was asked to do it. And with that, it was because I knew, they wanted me to. They likely told me why each time, and they saw the qualities in me. They told me that. And biggest of all is they had belief in the value that I could add to other people, and because of what they saw. So not only you yourself being able to receive that from people and to have that as empowering for yourself, but also knowing that you have that ability to give that to other people. All the people that you are working with or will be working with, you can intentionally add value. You can give them that permission. You can call out those things in them that you see, and you can give them that belief to jumpstart their leadership, specifically, when it comes to Plexus and growing in this business, because that is foundational. I think it was imperative and so valuable for me. I would likely think that it was, would be important and has been valuable for a lot of you guys as well.
Okay, so I had the most like stars, highlights, underlines for the next pages here on 43 and 44. I thought this was so good. So if you guys have been invited into a position of leadership, say, what would that look like in Plexus? Your upline asked you to do a call. They have talked about you having a YouTube channel, or I'm going to guess that the majority of you on here are probably at least in the section of positional leadership. So this applies to all of you. And I love where he talked about like what most people think about when they talk about changing teams, like getting them to get better results. They rely on like capabilities or different things like that. But he talks about that it's them, like they need to change. And that's what we say. So if your business isn't going where you want it to go, what needs to change? It's not the products, it's not the compensation plan, it's you, and you are the most important part of your organization. It's not, like he says, the 3 Ps: products, promotions, policies, or processes. I guess it's more than 3 people. Those are all things that we look at when like our businesses aren't doing what we want, but you have the power to be the one to turn that ship around. you, wherever you are at, silver, gold, emerald, it doesn't matter. And he says the leaders who do the most harm to an organization are the ones who stop growing. And I think this can be very common at Ruby and at Emerald. These are just kind of like the points where we will see people stop growing. Not all the time, but oftentimes they feel like they've got to a certain place. Maybe they think their team should pick up more of the slack, or maybe they feel like, okay, I've done this. Maybe they're a really independent type of person, and why can't my team do it without me? And that's not the case. They need a leader, and they need you to, what I wrote down just through the whole thing and just talking with my own family about it is leadership is service. And that's just what I want everybody to remember as we're reading all of this. It's literally serving our people and being down there in the trenches with them. And I have some more on that, but I think that's in a couple pages. Sal, I'll let you go ahead because I literally have so many more notes on this.
I do too. I loved it. And I have the same thoughts. I guess what struck me, I highlighted a lot of the same things you did, Phil. What struck me a lot was kind of what Jamie was just saying is, you were selected, maybe given this position because your leaders see something in you. And so that first is an honor, right? I mean, we have to see that as, wow, that's an honor. And what am I going to do about it? So he talks a lot about what are you going to be your choices as a leader? Like, how are you going to develop as a leader? What kind of actions are you going to put into place? Your core values, what does that look like? What kind of leader do you want to be? And I really think that's important to think about because when I started going through this, I really didn't feel like I had a lot of time to think about that because it kind of happened fast. So that would be a piece of advice is like really sit down and know who you are as a person and what kind of leader you want to be. And the bottom line, he said, is it's an invitation to make a difference in somebody's life. You guys, just like Phallin said, it is service. And it, like he said, good leadership changes individual lives, and it truly does. But since you've been given this opportunity to maybe, like Val said, lead a team call or speak up on book club or do maybe a live in the team page or something, that is something you can step into. And it is scary. I know that. I understand that. I feel that. I remember, but that's something that your leader sees that you can do, and she believes in you. And so you can be brave and do it no matter what, no matter how scary it is. And that is, like he says, your initial goal should be to show your leader and your team that you deserve the position that you have received. So what are you going to do to show your leader and your team that you deserve this position of leadership? And of course, the other thing is you don't want to stay here, right? Val and Jamie have both kind of mentioned this too. You got to keep growing. You got to find ways to grow. And that means saying yes to the hard things and doing that sort of thing. And also doing the personal growth, pouring time into videos, building your belief in yourself, in the products, in the company. You've got to keep working on yourself. You can't just be complacent and sit there. You can't stay in that position. You have to want to move on to the next position. Okay.
So Sal said two big things there that I had also written down as questions. So I want to repeat that and have you guys write that down to reflect on for later, but also put it in the chat if you have thoughts on it right now. One was, how are you going to use your leadership abilities? Because he does say in here, and you can write that in the chat if you have some things come to mind, write it down for later reflection. But he does say in here, it's given to you, like this position to be able to lean into, to display your leadership abilities, but it doesn't guarantee that you're gonna have people follow you, right? So what are you gonna do about that? And then in terms of leaning into that. And then my second thing I want to highlight that Sal said, and you can write it down as a question also, and put it in here, but she said, deciding what kind of leader you want to be, and specifically, well, I guess that's a question. What kind of leader do you want to be? What are those qualities, right? So write that down so that you can actually write that down later. You can also pop that in the chat. Things that came to mind for me was being a great question asker, being wise, being discerning, being able to listen well, being able to leave somebody better than when I was there in terms of adding value to people, right? Integrity. So what things come to mind when you think of what kind of leader you want to be, because all those are extremely important with moving forward. Phallin, anything else on this section?
No, mine starts at point number 4.
Oh, sorry. I mean, through the up, the whole up. You can move on to
The whole
4.
thing, the whole thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, we can go to 4.
All right, so Jamie kind of was talking about this here, and I want you guys to look at that under point number 4, a leadership position allows potential leaders to shape and define their leadership at the bottom of page 41, about not being reactive. Do you want to come down on people or lift them up? So correcting people and telling them what to do, or do you want to give them orders or ask questions? So when you are looking at yourself as a leader and how you're communicating with your people, are you telling them what to do or are you asking questions? And it's such a, I would say it's a skill set. You definitely have to learn it. You have to practice with it. It doesn't always come naturally because we have that image in our mind that leadership is telling someone what to do. And even if you think like, who's the best leader that I know? Most people are going to tell you whoever is loud and in charge and getting things done. Like it's just that stereotypical, this is what a leader looks like. And that is just not true. He talks about at the very end of this section that true leadership is realizing that there's not just one path of leadership. It's looking at everyone's unique talents, their personality, their backgrounds. There is not one type A, get it done type of leader. Exactly. Jamie's a strong leader. I'm a strong leader. Sal's a strong leader. And we are all very, very different in our leadership styles. And we all lead huge teams. So it's not just one type of person. I love that he makes such a huge emphasis here on ethics and character. And you have to live out those things that you talk about. And even if you think people are fooled, they 100% are not fooled. They know if you care. They know if you have integrity. They know if you're an honest person. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to have character as your core values and the root of who you are so that people will respect you as a leader, not just you as their leader, but a leader of leaders is what you want to be. And that's the foundation of that.
Absolutely. Sal, do you have anything that you want to add for the whole rest of this chapter? I'm looking if anything.
I don't really, I kind of skipped
Okay.
ahead a little bit to that part too, so.
Okay. Yeah,
No,
you kind of talked about that with the values.
yeah,
One
yep.
question that I think was important to close up this chapter here. I mean, everything that Val said is so valuable. You guys, I was very insecure, even hitting a jewel status. Like I still struggled to see myself as a good leader. And part of that is like the comparison thing of thinking, okay, well, yeah, a leader is defined as this person or that person, or this person could do it so much better than me. And therefore somehow that made me less of a leader or whatever. But it was completely not having the right perception of what leadership even is, right? So that helped me grow so much as a leader when I was able to actually define that for what it was and to acknowledge what I bring to the table personally. So if that's something you struggle with or have insecurities with, know that that can change. And also that it has to start with, you know, seeing what you bring to the table, the value that you can add. And it's not the flashy things. That's the true leadership at the core. It's loving and caring on people. One question to close out this part, and then we will quickly move on to the downside of position. But on page 48, he asks, he's talking about having to live out these values. And he asked a lot of really good questions there. So something that you could take time to reflect on, what kind of habits and systems will you consistently practice? So important for all of us, right? What will you do to organize yourself? What will you do every day when you show up for work? He asks other questions there too, but just think that's a part of leadership, is leading ourselves first. And it is the most difficult part of leadership. So those are some really good questions to reflect on and take ownership of. So let's move on to the downside of position. And here he goes over 8 different points here. And he starts off with saying it's misleading in terms of this, in general, because you think you just have this and everything is going to flow through it. Everything's just going to come, and you have this leadership. You think it's a noun, you think it's a title, and he right away points out that it's an action, right? Not just a position. So it takes actually leaning into that, and growth is a part of that. And it's something that, like Phallin was, mentioning earlier, it's a journey. It's something we always need to be learning and growing through, and we have not arrived. And when we have that, the feeling that we have arrived, that's when I think we can get into trouble, which I'm actually skipping into later part with that. So I'll pause on that. But, and then number 2, I'm going to quick bump into and then pass on to you guys to go however back or forth that you want. But he mentions that we can devalue people. And the questions I think are super powerful in the middle of 53 to really reflect on and how you are seeing your own people in terms of genuine belief in them, in terms of maybe thinking, kind of thinking down on your people, thinking they can't, versus assuming that they will, assuming that they're going to, not follow through this time because they haven't before, instead of seeing the best in them, seeing them for the problems versus their potential. So how do you see your people? And making sure that we take account and inventory and how we are looking for the best and calling out the best in our people, even if they might have shown otherwise, right? Because when you raise them to a higher standard, when you raise them to their best potential, that's what you can do as a leader to help someone improve and to get better and to learn and to grow through things. But if you can't see them for the best potential that they are, and you can't raise them to that level, then you're not going to be able to lead them to that level. You're going to keep them down to whatever they think they're at, So that's our responsibility as leaders to help people step up into that.
That is something that I had underlined too, Jamie. And I was just thinking about my own leadership with people. I knew everyone's weaknesses. I knew all my leaders' weaknesses and things that they needed to grow in, but I did not talk about them. When they were struggling, I would say, let's work on your social media. Let's work on getting out of the house, whatever it was. But when I was talking to them in the middle of just like normal day to day, I was building them up and why they can do this. And yes, there's like how you can improve on things. You don't just want to be that cheerleader. You still want to be the coach telling them things to do, but it's in this positive, you can do this, you are normal. I love to feel normal because sometimes I feel like I'm not, and it feels so good to not be alone. I think that's it. Like, I don't like to be alone. And so when my leaders were struggling with something, I would find a way to relate. Like, yeah, girl, I am right there with you. This was so hard for me too. And then give them something positive to be able to improve in that area, but while believing in them. And I think that is just so insanely important. And then of course he was talking about Andy Griffith. I never watched this TV show, but I know my dad did. But just talking about serving the team, he didn't have to demand respect because people knew that he was serving. He knew that he was due respect because of who he was. I think that is so good and so powerful. A lot of times leaders will use rules and regulations that are to their advantage, and they ignore relationships. They do not promote teamwork, and they do not create a positive working environment. You have to create teamwork and a positive working environment. And we talk about that with our leaders too. Like, we want to do events together. Don't just do it yourself. Give people a job. Give them something to do. Every single one of you, even if you're not gold yet and you have people under you, give them a task to do and then work on it together. Yeah, I'll stop there. I have more though.
And under that same one, number 4, the rights over responsibilities, I loved that one. And I think it's really applicable here. And I have watched the Andrew Griffith show. I grew up watching that with my grandpa, and Barney Fife was my favorite. It was always in black and white, and he was just hilarious. I remember laughing and laughing and laughing. And he truly did not deserve the badge. I mean, he had the badge and he was in the uniform, but he did not. He made bad decisions, and most of the time it was just humorous. But so that right there, you guys, is, you know, when you get a certain rank, or when you obtain a certain, you know, in a certain place or whatever, don't get entitled. Don't feel like, oh, I deserve this, or I get to do this now because I'm a ruby, or because I'm an emerald, right? You cannot have that mindset, because just because you have that title doesn't necessarily mean that, unless you're showing up. Unless you are, you know, like Sheriff Andy, right? People respected him. He was the leader. They could see that, you know, he did, you know, mature, right things. He led his team well, right? So, positional leaders who rely on their rights develop a sense of entitlement. They expect their people to serve them rather than looking for ways to serve their people. Their job description is more important to them than job development, and they value territory over teamwork. So just because you have the right to do something as a leader doesn't mean it is the right thing to do. Okay, so that's just another example of continuing to strive to grow where you are and not settling at that position, and mature in that way. And you'll start to change your focus from enjoying authority for its own sake to using authority over serving other people. That's really what the bottom line is serving other people in that way and not getting caught in that entitlement trap there. Okay.
Mhm. One thing that he mentions on you can get branded and stranded. So I think the important thing, one thing that really stuck out for number 6, he said, if he gave the good potential leaders little or nothing, they still succeeded and they became great leaders. And when you gave the mediocre leaders everything that he had, they could still struggle to continue to move forward, right? So we come into contact with so many people in this business, and we try and help a lot of people. And when it comes to the business side of this, and I mean, if you've been around long enough, you're going to have people that come and go in this. And now there is a very, I mean, you can't miss the message in this. It's loud and clear that we have to learn and grow as leaders, right? And we have to raise our leadership lid. But at the same time, I think this point is very clear and important. It's something that we see that, you know, the people with the qualities and the character and the hunger for and that have that leadership potential, that want to grow in that kind of way, they're going to keep growing and they are going to be successful. We have an incredible team here. We have an incredible company. We have all of this here. And sometimes I think we struggle a lot on that line of dragging people or not, you know, maybe wanting it more for someone than they want for themselves. And we can beat ourselves up with, you know, what else could we do to help them? That, you know, I don't really know what else to do. We lost another, you know, a silver or a gold that didn't stick with it. Well, it happens if you've been here long enough to all of us. You know, not everyone sticks around, but the people, you'll find your people, and those people will go to the top with you. You'll find people that will, you know, do better than you, which is even amazing sometimes. So I want to find the leaders who have the amazing leadership potential and qualities that, you know, maybe are even different or better than what I have, right? That we can balance each other out. And you know, and at the end of the day, you are going to, even if you pour all your time into somebody, you are going to have those people that just don't rise up to that. So what do we learn in that? Who are we looking for? What's the character that we're looking for in leadership that we want to attract, that we want to call out in people, that we want to reward with, I mean, in a sense of a word, with our time and with our energy and what we're going to, you know, who we're going to link arms with. Because that is who we want to lean into, right? And no, at the end of the day, anyone can be successful in this, the right people who want to continue to grow, you know, in their leadership with us. So I thought that was a really big point that applies a lot with us.
You know, that part there. So my sponsor, Lori, told me that I want to play ball with whoever plays ball. So the people who throw it back to me. So if I have a new level 1 and I'm like, hey, let's get on the phone, let's schedule weekly coaching calls, and they just ignore the message. Okay, well, they're not throwing the ball back. And usually 9 times out of 10, the reason people are not throwing the ball back. So if you want to figure out how to get somebody who will actually be all in or do the things, it's belief in themselves and the products or in the business. So if you want somebody to throw the ball back to you and they're not getting on book club, they're not getting on the calls, they're not getting their people on 3-way calls, you know that you need to go back to the beginning and build belief into them. If they're not coming to you with questions and they're a new join and they're working the business and they don't have questions probably every day, they do not have enough belief to actually commit to fully going all in. So if that's happening to you and you're like, I'm dragging someone, stop dragging. Stop trying to get them to do the work. Get back to the belief in themselves and the products or in the business model through the posts that you do, through the conversations that you have with them, and through your stories. There's ways to do it other than like, oh, I see you don't have a very strong belief. Like, let's work on that. No, do not say that to them. You have to know that in your mind and then figure out how to convey that to them, like knowing where they're at and then getting creative. And this is what I wanted to say before we end with Sal and then go into some questions. But on the very last page, 63, the greatest downside about level 1 leadership is that it is neither creative nor innovative. It's leadership that just gets by. So if you are like, I'm showing up on the team calls, I'm on the book club, I'm doing this leadership study, I do all the things, that can be a positional leader, and you wonder why your people aren't following you. You need to get creative. You need to get innovative. You need to get that excitement and something new and do an event and be excited about the new product and make a big launch for yourself. So there's company launches and then there's your individual launch of the product. Make some stories, do a bunch of reach outs, get people to join. So yeah, that's what I would say to close that up.
I think that's perfect. I have nothing more to add. I had that same thing highlighted, and that's a great way to end, I think.
Sounds
It's
good.
bare minimum, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess I will say this, think about it. When the people who work with you can hardly wait to quit working with you, something's not working. So if you are feeling that with your team, like you can't get them to do anything, I agree 100% with Phallin and saying you've got to get back to the belief with them, because they're not going to do it if they don't have the belief. But some's got to give with you too. You got to see what that is, change, do events, try something different. You can't just sit and keep doing the same thing. And just enough to get by that complacency a little bit. You got to keep just coming up with new stuff, growing in different ways, showing up. That's really what we have to do. You got to lean into that. Sometimes I think we can retract a little bit because we just feel paralyzed. It's that analysis paralysis, right? Like, oh, I'm not sure what to do. Well, the best thing to do when you feel paralyzed is take action. You got to move. You got to take action and do something about it. Because if you just sit in that place, nothing's going to happen. Your team won't move forward that way and you won't grow either. So.
Yeah, like you said, people quit people and not companies. So think of this from the positive aspect. They put you into positional leadership by signing up under you. They literally put you in position to be their leader. They could have bought from anybody else, any other supplement, or within Plexus. They could have trusted somebody else to lead them, but they put you in that position. So if you have someone signed up under you, I'm going to guess that you're probably in positional leadership level 1 at the minimum. And then if they quit after putting you in that position, there is usually something that needs to be worked on within you. And again, it's that belief too. Sometimes it's the belief you have in yourself. It's not dragging people. Sometimes it's you need to work on your belief in yourself, get your skill sets, get your mindset, whatever it is, or your belief in the products. Maybe you didn't lose all the weight you wanted. I hear it all the time. I'm like, you're telling me you believe in the products, but then you're like so worried about your weight. Like you ought to know by now that there's more to this than weight loss, right? or in network marketing in and of itself. So again, it just always, if you don't know what to do, it always diverts back to those things. But Jamie, do you have some questions for us?
I do
Or you-
have a question, and then
Oh,
we
you
can
do?
open up to everybody else, but I was gonna hold on to this at the end, but I'll ask it now. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. One thing that I think was going back to at the very beginning, he mentions specifically the example, the position he was given for leadership, and he said, and I said this already once, but it was merely a platform to display his leadership abilities. It did not guarantee that players would follow him. He said, earning that would be my responsibility. So how do you earn that responsibility to get people to follow you?
How do you earn it? Are you asking me? Am I the one that's on the spot, Jamie?
I wanted to ask you. And then and then we're up to everybody else. But I wanted to ask you that.
I was thinking about this a lot on my drive home as I was thinking about leading this stuff. And honest to God, I think it's when people would get me out of bed to do calls that I didn't want to do because I was sleeping. I think it's that servant leadership. I think that is what earned me the respect of people because honestly, you guys, I want a diamond so bad. I had no boundaries on anything else. I mean, my kids came first and foremost, but then after that, it was definitely my team. It wasn't my working out. It wasn't my makeup. It wasn't popping a pimple or fixing my toenails. It was literally my team. And I gave everything that I had to what they needed. It was, what did they need? They're like, let's do an event. I'm like, okay, perfect. Let's do an event. Let's go visit chiropractors' offices. Perfect. Let's visit the chiropractors' offices. Like whatever they wanted to do, I did not say no at all. And I think that they knew that I cared more about them than about myself. If it was something scary, I did it for them. And those are just the things that I can think of, like, because I had very early on a lot of respect and a lot of belief from the people who joined me. And I think that's what it was. I mean, now I'm a diamond, things have definitely changed, priorities have rearranged and stuff like that. But I think if you're hungry for this, you 100% have to serve your people where they're at. My people knew that they could call me any time of the day. I mean, Brittany told me that, like, I knew I could call you whenever and you would be there for me. And so I think that's what's important.
Val, did you have anything you wanted to add? No.
Just what I wrote in the comments, says that in there too, like Phallin, she didn't just tell us, all the leaders above me didn't just tell me to do it. They showed me and they did it themselves too. And I think that's earning your leadership as well. And I think confidence goes hand in hand with that. Even if you maybe don't feel 100% confident in what you're doing, like Phal didn't all the time at senior gold, because she was going so fast and we were all going fast too. And we didn't maybe know what we were doing or feel totally confident, but she did it anyway. And she just kind of eluded that confidence anyway. Like, I'm going to the top. Are you coming with me or not? And that just makes a huge difference. It's contagious. We all just fed on that and wanted that. So you have to be that confident leader to your team too. They have to see that in you, and you can't just tell them to do things. You got to do them. You got to do them with them, and you got to show them how to do it.
You figure it out together.
Whatever, I mean, I would think this is true for all of the diamonds, but whatever I expected from my team, I would grab onto things. Like if someone successful said something, I'd be like, okay, that's like God's word right there. And they said that whatever you do, you can expect your team, your level ones, to do half of that. And I was like, all right, I expect them to work 4 hours a day and I'm going to work 8. I expect them to be doing events. I'm going to do 5 this week because I would do them with all of my leaders. And then they were all just doing it with their leaders, but I had a lot of really wide leaders. So I was doing more than anybody else on my team. And I'm not saying that to brag. Like I said, I was hungry for it. It didn't feel like he talked about that. Like it wasn't like, oh, is it quitting time yet? You're not going to get a week into this if that's your mentality, honestly. It was full blown, like, I'm doing this. All right, let's go. Like I didn't even stop to pay attention to look behind me to see what anybody else was doing because I was moving full speed ahead. I just didn't do that. It was just about where we were all going together.
When you don't look to just fulfill the bare minimum, then you look to see what else. And that can apply personally, it can apply to other people and to what you see in them and to calling that out. And I think, you know, when you do stuff together, when you show them the way, when you help them complete something and teach something and they have success, that builds that rapport and that trust as well. So part of that has to come along with the process too, but loved all those answers. Do you guys have any questions? I know we said that we would open the floor. So if you do, you can unmute or ask.
The
So I
question
was
that came to,
wondering,
oh,
sorry, I'll wait. You can go first.
me first? Are you sure? Okay. I was just gonna ask, so when you do like tell people like you should make a video on that, you know, speak up on team call or sorry, book club. I have a lot of strong personalities on my team. And is it too much to be like, wow, good job? You know, you don't want to make them feel childish. So what do you say to people when they do step up and do that? Because I feel like it could come off as like, good job, you know? So I'm just curious.
Okay, I'll answer. So I wouldn't say good job. I would definitely not say good job. So you're right on not saying that. Don't say I'm proud of you. I would say that. And one of my level ones was like, I hate it when you say you're proud of me. It makes me feel blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, I will never say that to you again. But I would call out something that you loved about what they said. Oh my gosh, I loved how simple you made that in your video. Or, wow, that was really thought-provoking. I had to think about that some more after you said that on book club. So I would compliment them.
So it's not too much to be like, oh my goodness, I love it. Like if they send you the video first, like is that okay?
I would, if they send it to you first, then I would say, wow, that was really good. You are so smart. I would still compliment them. I would call out, this is how you build belief in someone about themselves. I would call out what you love about what they said or did or something that spoke to you, something to carry on the conversation further.
Perfect.
So along with that, I think that's a good question. I think it's can apply in a lot of ways. So along with that, if everyone in here, you guys are here because you are a leader, right? You are showing up, you want to show up as a leader, you are showing up as a leader, however that is. When you see videos in the team page and people do make a video or put up a post, like even commenting underneath that, instead of simply tagging your people, even giving a comment that is very specific, that shows, in my opinion, some good leadership. You validate someone and you highlight something that is important. And that adds value to that person. It adds value to something specific that they did well. So take the time to be specific when you know, in a way that you can add value to someone. And that is by, you know, complimenting like on something intentional that you want to highlight that's good. And it validates leaders around you. So that's something that, you know, everyone can show up and do in that way too.
Love that. Thanks.
Okay, so my question was, can you guys each kind of share with us what things you feel like you do to ensure that you're leading yourself well? Because I hear you guys talk often about make sure you're leading yourself well, but I would like some like specifics, like other than obviously consistency and showing up, like what else do you guys do to be sure you're leading yourselves well?
That's a good question. All right. So something that comes to mind, I mean, something basic would be continuing to do leadership development, right? So reading books and all that kind of stuff. So that's a basic answer. But something else that comes to mind is, how to respond in different situations. I don't know why this is coming to mind, but I'm just going to say it, be it valuable or not. But how you respond in given situations. So sometimes that means something I just said right there in terms of adding value to people, right? And being intentional in that, but also on the other side of it, where sometimes leading yourself in various scenarios can be difficult when it comes to not needing the last word, or not needing to point out someone else's fault, or to say that that was originally your idea or something, when it comes to group scenarios or leading your team, or sidelines or uplines or whatever, let alone life in general. I mean, this very much applies to family and to your marriage, if you're married, or anything like that. So I think that can be ultimately sometimes the hardest thing when, especially when you're a strong leader or you have a strong opinion on something, and not maybe jumping to conclusions, assuming the best in people. So if something happens, then ultimately first assuming the best, even if something was negative, assuming good intentions, even if something was appearing poor or negative, giving someone the benefit of the doubt, asking questions, waiting to respond, and making sure it's level-headed and from a leadership position versus just reactive and emotional. So be it this business, be it personal life, or in other scenarios in your life, I think that is something that is a really good way to lead yourself well.
I think mindset is one of the biggest things. Like if you can work on this first thing in the morning, I have created a very long morning routine for myself. Anything more than 2 minutes feels long. So if I'm dry brushing or doing some other things, coconut oil in my mouth, whatever it is, listening to a podcast to set the tone for vision, belief, inspiration, whether it's something health minded, something leadership. I like to fluctuate, even dealing with mindset stuff. Like there's so many categories, as long as it's positive and uplifting, which most podcasts seem to be, that sets the tone for myself to be a good leader. For my team, it also sets the tone for just getting moving and into the groove for the day right off the bat. So aside from the usual, like be consistent, work hard, that would be what I would say with leading yourself well. And then also this changes from whatever, rank to rank and season to season in life, but you can't expect your team to do something that you're not doing. So if you want them to be showing up in their stories or showing their face or posting every day or sending messages, do those things, and then do it with them. Don't just tell them. So kind of what we were saying, I think that's really an important reminder too.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the same stuff, showing up, consistency, doing it, not just saying it. If you say you're going to do something, follow through with it and do it for your team. That's leadership. You can't, that hurts trust. If you say you're going to do this and you end up not doing it, right? You got to follow through with what you say you're going to do. I think that's important. I am really intentional about reading. I always am trying to read 2 books at a time. Our Thursday night typical book club one, I'm always doing that one, but I'm always trying to read another book along with it in my other spare time or whatever. So I'm always trying to read 2 books at a time. I spend a lot of time in the Word. My devotions are very important. I get in the scripture in the Bible every morning. It's very, very important for me to start my morning that way. I start my morning with prayer a lot. I spend a lot of time in prayer for my team. So I feel like that is continually developing myself because I'm praying specific for my team. And before I've started doing this, you guys, the last, 3 months, before I even get out of bed, I have, if you sleep with your phone next to you, you could use your phone, or if you don't, you could use a paper and pen, but writing down 5 things that you're grateful for every single morning before you even get out of bed, just jotting down 5 things that you have so much gratitude for or are grateful for in your life. Just really trying to focus and start my day focusing on gratitude and not feet hit the floor. What do I got to do? Run, checklist, all of that. I'm really trying to focus on starting my day with gratitude. I feel like it starts out better that way. And then what else was I going to say? Oh, coaching calls. I don't stop doing coaching calls with my upline. I do coaching calls very frequently with my upline, even as a diamond. I feel like that is continually growing myself because even as a diamond ruby leader, like we all have big teams as diamonds, we still need that growth and that help. And so I need help sometimes, and I need direction and advice and encouragement. And so the coaching calls with my upline is something that really helps me continue to grow as a leader.
Jeff, ladies, any other questions? We have a little bit more time here.
I do. I have a question about the difference and where the fine line is from growing strong leaders to coddling to not seeming distant. What is that fine line where you lead by that example, but also allow them for growth?
I know the answer because of what Phallin always says. So that's immediately what regurgitates through my head. So Phallin, either you can say it or I can say what you always say. But I know she does the show them, do it with them, and then let them go. But Phallin, do you want to expand on that?
You always make me talk about it, but I know you can say the same thing that.
Well, I can, but I feel like it's like all your words if you want to hear it
No,
from the horse's mouth.
You're fine. I was trying to find the page in the book that literally says, where is he talking? Basically, like the good leaders are gonna do the things anyways, and then the mediocre ones, no matter how much you give into them, like they're not going. Honestly, I would say again, it's just belief. And if someone doesn't have the character, if they're needy and they want you to be their best friend forever, most of the diamonds are like, I don't have time for that drama. I cannot be everyone's best friend. And if they're gonna get emotional because I have another friend, like part of this is business, and yes, there are relationships. So really, it just depends. I mean, if they're gonna need to be coddled, or is it you coddling them? Which one is it, Sabrina?
I think it's different in some situations. I have some really strong leaders, and then I have others that I feel can be strong leaders, and I'm not sure if I'm just babying the steps, maybe a little bit. I'm not really sure. So I guess it's more of a me problem.
If you've already done something with them, or you're living by example, you're doing the things. If you've already done some of the things with them, I would identify specifically what you see in them or what you think they're capable of, and then empower them to do that. Call those things out, and then it's the playing the, throwing the ball back and forth. So whether or not you give them permission essentially to like, hey, this is what I see in you. This is something you should make a video on this, or you should do this or whatever. Then either be it in a way where you can do it with them first, or have them do it and then see if they follow through and throw it back. If they don't, you could even ask why or what's holding them back. You could see if you can get to any mindset issues if need be. But if you're covering the mindset stuff, if you're empowering them to do some more things and they're still really playing it safe, and you feel like you've stepped into all that, then that's kind of where who's playing the ball, or throwing the ball back and forth, right? So just make sure if you feel like you are playing it safe and not saying some of the things, step into that, lean into it, empower them, call out those things in them, build that belief in them, and then, do it with them and have them do it on their own.
Didn't he say he didn't learn how to be a leader because of what his dad was telling him to do, or something like that? But so basically, don't tell them what to do. Let them watch you. And that's how you are going to develop them into a leader. So what I did was, I still cannot find the podcast or wherever John Maxwell talked about this, but he talked about the train moving forward, and the people either jump on or they just stand there and do nothing, but the train keeps moving. And that's what I did. I was passing out brochures. I was going door to door. I was doing events. I was talking to chiropractors, and I just brought them along with me. Here's what we're going to do. And I just expected them to do it. And if they didn't, honestly, I think I have like short-term memory loss. Like I would just forget that I was working with them or talking to them, and I would just move on. Same reason why I have no problems messaging people. I just forget that I met, oh, look, it's been 3 months and they never responded. Like I'm not bothered because I forget. So I just move on without them. So you do what you're doing. Host an event at the gym. Go and have a team gathering. The ones who show up are the ones that you work with. It's kind of that playing ball too. And we get stuck in dragging when we don't have enough people running. If you were diamond, would you worry about the people that were sitting there not making it there? I know we're supposed to be serving and supposed to be thinking about everybody, but no, you wouldn't, because you hit your goal and you're going to work with whoever is easier to work with. If you can help someone in your downline hit emerald, why are you going to struggle along with the person who won't get themselves past silver? But if that's all you have, that's who you're going to work with. So I would just encourage everybody to get the numbers, get more people so that you don't have to worry about the people who don't even want it. And again, if you give them enough belief, and if they get enough belief just from watching and their own life experiences, then great, they will come along. And I'm not talking about leaving people behind who are slow. I have lots of diamonds who are now diamonds that were not diamond when other people were jewels, like they were way back there. That doesn't matter. They're learning and growing, and a lot of it they can do on their own too.
That's really good. I mean, I remember parts in my business where that was very much the case, and it's glaringly hard when you have less people to work with, because it feels like you have to like hang on to what you got, and you have to somehow get them to do everything and help them be successful at all costs, versus being in a mindset of abundance and knowing that you have countless people that you are connected with, or that, will be connected with, whatever, on some level or another, potentials that will help you grow your team, that you can help get to where they want to go. And those people then become less not important as people, but important as like needing to drag them if that's not really what they want. Because we want to help everybody who wants to grow. But if they don't really want it, then we can easier bless and release, or help them where they are and help other people grow. They can stay or grow whatever pace they want, or stay where they're at. And we still love them for who they are and that they're part of the team right where they are. But then we have, when we in that place of abundance, in that mindset of abundance, we might not feel so desperate, for those scenarios. So that's really good.
Awesome, ladies. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So before I would move on, I would check myself. And that's what I've always done. Like before I leave a whole back office of lines of people who aren't ordering, like, have I done everything that I can? Is my customer care good? Am I providing opportunities for events? Am I inviting them to book club? Am I visiting with them in person? Am I reaching out to them in more way than let's get on the phone? Let's get on the phone. Oh, they don't want to get on the phone, moving on. So just making sure that I'm doing what I can in a very strategic way. Like I would write a list of the bullet points of things that I should do as a good leader, and then likely them. I mean, as a leader who's developed into who I am today, who still has a lot of room for growth, I can see where I've made mistakes with other people, or maybe I could have done better with them or whatever. But that's where you're at today. And there are people who are ready for your level of leadership that it will help them and move forward with all of you guys together. So yeah.
One real quick thing to mention as you were talking, Val, it made me think too of all the things that you're doing to move forward, and whether people are doing it with you, right? The train. One thing that made me think too is make sure you talk about what you're doing, whether that be with your people, or whether that be, in your stories, whether that be, in the team page and doing videos, like talk about what you're doing, being excited, train on what you're doing. If if you are hungry and you're in action, then you can teach other people to do what you're doing, and the hungry ones will go with you. But if you're quietly doing what you're doing and not vocalizing that, then it's hard to visibly lead in that way when you are maybe doing the action, but you're just kind of hiding behind whatever. So be visible in your activity and in your leadership to empower other people to see what you are doing so that they want to go and do what you're doing and go where you're going. So be that with your team, be that with, you know, your social media, be that in the team page, whatever, but be visible in what you are doing, and your hunger and your excitement and the activity through that is contagious.
I just want to add one quick thing too. I think sometimes when we have this team that we've worked with for a long time, and some of them aren't playing ball with you anymore, but they're still, you know, part of it or whatever, want to be part of it. It's hard to maybe as a leader feel like you can move on, you know, and keep growing when they kind of maybe pull you back or keep you stuck a little bit. And sometimes I see that a little bit, and especially in personalities, like yellow personalities or whatever. You know, but you have to remember, you guys, what your goals are here. And yes, you're serving them in a way that they need to be served, but don't let that hold you back from moving forward in your goals. And basically the bottom line is you have to keep talking to people. You have to find new business builders. You have to find new people. Okay. You can't just sit and wait for your team to get you to the next goal, especially if you feel complacency there. Okay. You gotta, it's okay to move on and find new business builders. And so just a reminder, I guess, a little bit to make sure that you aren't having your team hold you back. Does that make sense? Stay moving forward, stay finding new business builders, keep that passion up, even if your team doesn't have that passion anymore. Okay.
I love that, ladies. Thank you so much for your great questions, for being on here, and you guys are amazing. Look in the original post for the chapters to read for next week, and we will see, well, in 2 weeks. We'll see you guys then.